The Dream Lantern has found a story for you tonight. In a town where the street lamps burn low in the gold until dawn, there is a postman who delivers letters people wrote to themselves years ago, without ever knowing exactly when they'd arrive. Get comfortable now. Let your breathe slow. Let your body soften and let go of anything you were carrying today. There is nowhere else to be. Just settle in and listen. In the town of Aldermoor, where the streets curved gently around a slow, quiet river, there was a postman named Elias. He was not young, and he was not old, but somewhere in that soft and remarkable middle, where a person has finally settled into exactly who they are. He wore a long grey coat, a little worn at the cuffs, and he carried a leather satchel that seemed somehow always to weigh exactly as much as it should. Elias did not deliver ordinary mail. He had never delivered ordinary mail. Not once in all his years walking the streets of Aldermoor. His letters came from a small stone office at the edge of town, tucked between a shuttered bakery and a lamplighter's cottage, with a single brass sign above the door that read simply, "Letters to later." People came there throughout their lives, whenever the feeling struck them, to write letters to their own future selves. A young woman, nervous about a decision she hadn't yet made. An old man, wanting to remind himself of a summer he was afraid of forgetting. A child, barely old enough to spell, writing to the grown-up she would someday become. They would seal their letters and hand them to the quiet clerk behind the desk, and they would leave without ever choosing a date. That part was never up to them. The letters simply waited. tucked into long wooden drawers that lined the walls of the little stone office, sometimes for a single season, sometimes for decades until they were ready. And somehow, though no one could quite explain how, they always seemed to know. Each evening, just as the sun dipped low behind Aldermore's rooftops, and the sky turned the soft color of a fading ember, Elias would arrive at the office, and the clerk would hand him that night's letters. Never many, 2 or 3 usually, sometimes only 1. Elias never asked how the letters chose their moment. He had stopped wondering about that many years ago. The way a person stops wondering why the tide comes in and simply learns instead to walk beside it. Tonight, there were 2 letters waiting for him. He tucked them gently into his satchel, alongside a small tin of peppermints he kept for the walk, and stepped out into the cooling evening air. The town was hushed at this hour, the way towns get right after supper, when the day's noise has finally settled and only the gentlest sounds remain. Somewhere, a kettle whistled softly behind a lit window. Somewhere else, a dog turned 3 slow circles before settling onto a porch. The lamplighter was just beginning his rounds, moving unhurried from post to post, and each lamp bloomed gently to life behind him. One warm gold circle after another, lightening Elias's way without him ever needing to ask. He walked slowly. He always walked slowly. There had never once in all his years been any reason to hurry. His first stop that evening was a small cottage near the edge of the Millpond, its windows glowing amber, its chimney breathing a thin curl of smoke into the darkening sky. He knocked twice, softly the way he always did, and waited. The woman who answered was perhaps 60, her hair shivering gently at the temples, wrapped in a cardigan the color of moss. Elias, she said, warmth rising easily into her voice. I wondered if it might be tonight. He smiled and reached into his satchel and drew out a single envelope. The paper gone soft and slightly yellowed with time. Her name was written on the front in handwriting that was unmistakably her own. So rounder, looser, the handwriting of someone much younger. 31 years, she murmured, turning it over gently in her hands. I wrote this the year my daughter was born. Elias only nodded and waited the way he always did, in case she wanted company for their wedding. And sometimes people did. She opened it slowly, carefully, the way one opens something that might be fragile. Inside was a single page, and she read it there in the doorway. The lamplight catching the edges of the paper, her eyes moving slowly across words she had written more than half a lifetime ago. Elias watched her face soften. He saw the exact moment her breath caught, just slightly, and then released. I told myself not to be afraid, she said quietly, more to herself than to him. I was so worried back then that I wouldn't be a good mother. I told myself, whoever is reading this, whenever you are reading this, I hope you remember that you tried your best, and that trying your best was always enough. She looked up at Elias, her eyes glistening faintly in the lamplight. She's grown now, she said. My daughter, she has children of her own. Elias simply nodded again, the way he always did, letting the moment be exactly as large or as small as it needed to be. He did not need to say anything wise. He only needed to be there, patient and unhurried, the way the letter itself had been patient, waiting 31 years for exactly this evening. Thank you, she said softly, pressing the letter gently to her chest. You are very welcome, Elias said, and tipped his cup and turned back toward the lamplit street. Behind him, he heard her door close slowly, softly, the warm light from her window spilling out just a little further into the dark before it. Two settled into stillness. He walked on. The river moved quietly beside the path, dark and glassy, holding faint reflections of the lit windows along the way. And all cold ones, low and unhurried, from somewhere in the tall illness that lined the water's edge. Elias reached into his coat pocket and unwrapped a peppermint, letting its coolness settle slowly on his tongue as he walked, matching his pace to the soft rhythm of his own footsteps against the cobblestones. His second letter that night led him further from the center of town, down a quiet lane where the houses grew further apart and the gardens grew a little wilder, full of the last untamed blooms of late summer. The house he stopped at was small and dark, except for a single lit window near the back. He knocked gently, and a young man answered, perhaps not yet 30, wearing a rumpled sweater, his eyes tired in the particular way of someone who has been sitting with too many thoughts for too many hours. A letter, Elias said simply, holding it out. From yourself, a little while ago, it looks like. The young man took it with a puzzled look, turning the envelope over, and then his expression shifted, softened as recognition settled in. I wrote this 4 years ago, he said quietly, right before I left for the city. I'd almost forgotten. He opened it there in the doorway, the same as the woman before him, and Elias waited, unhurried, listening to the crickets singing low and steady in the overgrown grass nearby. The young man read in silence for a long moment. Then, slowly, something in his shoulders loosened. The way tension does when it is finally given permission to leave. I was so certain back then, he said, half to himself. I wrote that I hoped I wouldn't lose sight of what mattered, that I hoped whatever happened, I would remember to come back here someday and slow down. He looked around at the wild, overgrown garden, the dark hills rising softly behind the house, the quiet lane he had grown up walking. I moved back in the spring, he said. I didn't even remember writing this. Elias smiled, the same patient, unhurried smile he offered every letter, every doorstep, every quiet reunion between a person and the self they used to be. It seems you kept your promise, he said gently, even without remembering you made it. The young man folded the letter carefully and held it for a long moment, looking out at the dark garden as though seeing it. Somehow, for the very first time. in years. Thank you for bringing this, he said finally. I think I need it tonight, more than I realized. That's usually how it works, Elias said. The letters seem to know. He tipped his cup once more and turned back toward the lake. His satchel considerably lighter now, though it never felt lighter in any way that mattered. It never carried weight the way ordinary things did. The walk back through Aldermoor was slower still, the night deepening around him into a soft velvet blue. Windows dimmed one by one as the town settled further into sleep. The lamplighter had finished his rounds long ago, and the gentle golden lights he'd left behind now stood watch over empty streets, patient and steady, the way they always did until morning. Elias walked past the Millpond again. Its surface now perfectly still, holding a faint, trembling reflection of the rising moon. He thought, as he often did on nights like this, about all the letters still waiting in the long wooden drawers back at the little stone office. Hundreds of them, perhaps thousands, each one holding some small folded piece of a person's hope or worry or quiet wish for who they might someday become. Each one patient, each one in its own way, already trusting that someday, when exactly the right evening, it would find its way home. He did not know what tomorrow's letter would hold. He never did. Not until the clerk placed them gently into his satchel. But he found a quiet comfort in that not knowing. The same comfort A person finds in watching a river move past, never in a hurry, never uncertain of where it is going, even if the exact path remains a mystery. By the time Elias reached his own small home near the edge of town, the stars had fully emerged, scattered softly across the deep blue sky above all the moss rooftops. He set his satchel down by the door, empty now until tomorrow's evening, and he allowed himself finally to rest. Perhaps somewhere tonight you also once wrote something to yourself long ago without ever meaning to. A quiet hope tucked into the back of your mind. You don't have to search for it now or remember exactly what it said. You can simply imagine it resting somewhere safe, folded gently, waiting patiently for exactly the right evening to find you. Maybe tonight is that evening, a reminder that you were once hopeful, that you once believed good things were still ahead of you, and that whatever small promise you made to yourself long ago is still quietly on its way, unhurried, the way all good things eventually are. You don't have to do anything with that thought right now. You can simply let it settle over you, soft as lamplight, soft as a letter slipped gently beneath a door. Let your breathing slow. Let your body grow heavy, the way tired feet grow heavy after a long, unhurried walk. Let your thoughts loosen and drift the way a quiet street settles once every window has finally gone dark. Whatever you carried through your day, you can set it down now. Someone patient is watching over the rest. Someone unhurried is walking softly through the dark, carrying something gentle meant just for you, arriving exactly when you need it. You don't have to wait for it. You can rest now and trust that it's already on its way. The soft dark, the slow breeze, the quiet, unhurried walk, deeper and deeper into sleep. The lantern will be waiting for you tomorrow night. Sleep well.